So we will hear from each of the candidates. They'll have about 7 minutes each to talk to us, after which there will be approximately a 30-minute question and answer session. Before the meeting, we met, we drew names to determine the order in which our guests will present. I'd like to ask Rick McIver to come to the stage, please. Rick has been the MLA. Rick has been the MLA for Calgary Hayes since 2012. He was Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure and served as the Calgary Hayes Alderman on Calgary City Council from 2001 to 2010. 7 minutes, Rick.
7 minutes, okay. Well, thank you. It's certainly a pleasure for me to be here. And I want to thank Rotary, and I want to thank the Sutina for providing this venue, too. It's a beautiful hotel, and it's pretty new. I'm also very happy to be here with my good wife, Christine. Many of you will probably know her. Many of you that do will probably know that you like her better than you like me, and I like her better than I like me. So thanks for being here, Christine. Thank you. I am happy to be here. I am running for premier of this great province because I want to make sure that my grandkids and your grandkids and your kids and my kids have the same great opportunities that I have had since I chose to be an Albertan in 1981. It really matters. It not only matters to Alberta, it matters to all of Canada. And it's a big responsibility and one that I take seriously. We need to make sure there's so many things to look after, but this is a time where we need to make sure that those opportunities are there so that our kids can grow up and they can choose their career. They can get the best jobs. They have opportunities to start their own businesses or wherever possible join other businesses at as high a level as they can. And that won't happen by accident. It will happen by making sure the framework is there the government can set. And you know what? Albertans are already very industrious people. We produce, the 4 biggest dollar items that we produce are energy, forestry, agriculture, and tourism. And Albertans produce way more of these 4 things than they can possibly consume themselves. So we must reach out to the world. And I intend to do that. You know what? It's about working with the federal government, our neighboring provinces, and the U.S. on the pipelines. It's about working with our federal government on the railways to get the grain to market without delay and the lumber to market, and also working with our federal government to get people in tourism in here to consume the hotel rooms, the meals, and the other things that Albertans can't possibly consume. So reaching out is important. Making deals that seem impossible. And I'll say to you that I have always made that a priority in my political career. When I was on city council, I was able to negotiate an annexation with Rocky View that everybody considered impossible, and the negotiation went on for a long time, and not long after I was on the negotiation team, we signed a deal. We didn't have to go to court. We didn't have to go to the MGB board. During my time as transportation minister, I was able to make an agreement on Highway 43 with the Sturgeon Cree Nation that was 20 years unnegotiated, and that road's being built right now. The Highway 1A west of Cochrane, probably most people in this room don't know this. I was able to get an agreement with our friends at the Stoney Nation that gives us permission, and there was 30 years no one could get that agreement, and I'm proud to say I was able to do that. And I'm particularly proud of where we're standing here today on the Tsuut'ina Nation, where after almost 60 years, where we couldn't get an agreement with our very good friends and neighbors, I was able to do that on behalf of the people of Alberta, and that's why Peter was able to say there will be a ring road here in 2020 or 2021. But there's more than that. You know what the people, Albertans, are telling me as I've been going across this province, and I've been across a lot of it and talked to a lot of people because I love people and I love Albertans and talking to them. And they're telling me that they want to see financial discipline. So that's why some of the things that I've paid attention to in my campaign is I've said that we'll balance the budget within 3 years. We will put in legislation like this province once had to limit debt and to gradually bring the debt back down to zero. And we will, my intention is to get 50% of the resource revenue into savings by 2020. They're big goals, but you know what? Alberta's a place where we love big goals. It's important, and I'm trying to bring common sense, new thinking to that, and that's important because Albertans have always also told me that a big issue that's on their mind is trust. They want to make sure that what has been called entitlement in the past will not be part of Alberta's future, and I can tell you, should you give me the privilege of being the next premier and the next leader of this party, that I will make sure that ends. And I often say, there's a lot of things I often say, people that hang around me, they say, hey, you always say this thing. But the fact is, one of the best predictors of future performance is past performance. And I would invite you to look at past performance of all the candidates. But on mine, please go online and look at my expense accounts. They are boring. You will fall asleep. And I think that is important because Albertans tell me they've had it up to their neck with exciting expense reports. You know, again, if you look at my travel record, I don't have $20,000 flights and $40,000 flights. You haven't seen that reported because, frankly, it's not exciting. I've said as part of my, you know, even in my constituency office budget, which I could spend 100% of, and no one would notice or care, I spend $10,000 to $20,000 every year less because I don't need it. I think Albertans want that type of fiscal discipline where somebody treats your money like whose money it is, yours. I think they're ready for that. And all the time, remembering to keep building those provinces, building the province, making those impossible deals. Again, if you're looking for somebody to make those impossible deals with BC or the United States, I would suggest you look at somebody with a track record of making those impossible deals. But it's also important to lead by example. I have said in my campaign, and so far the only one to have said that in this contest, is that my senior campaign team and any company they own will not be eligible for government contracts. I think it's important to lead by example. I've said that my senior staff won't make more than the premier does. In the past, there was a senior staff that made twice what the you know, the chief of staff for the premier in BC can make, and BC's got more people. It just doesn't make sense. Albertans are telling me they want it to come back. I've also said that those that lobby government Monday and tell us what size of paper clip we need, what color and what metal, shouldn't be able to come in the following Monday and say, have I got a paper clip for you, and it's the size, the color, and the metal that I told you last week you needed. The ability to do that has to change. If we do these things, then I think we'll be ready to look at the future. We could be able to, and I'll tell you what, I shouldn't take excuses. If we don't get the pipelines done right away, then we need to look and see what we can do for value added with our energy. And we need to see what we can do for value added with our agriculture. And I think we need to be creative about bringing people in for tourism, whether between the rubber tire market and flying in and whatever else we can. It's because government really has three functions: doing things for people that they need, avoiding doing things that they don't need, and most of the time, getting out of the way so Albertans can do what Albertans do: running business, creating a better future, and being entrepreneurial and making the world better. And let me say, a good example for government to follow would be the Rotary four-way test. Can you imagine how much better government would be in Alberta and around the world if everybody told the truth, if they made sure that things were always good for the other parties? And I would say to you, as Premier, that is something I shall aspire to, because politics is about reaching up rather than the common denominator. It's about building up the party rather than giving it away. It's about making things better and having a track record. And I think I'm being told that I'm at 7 minutes. Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Rick. We almost got rid of you. Tripping over the wires. The second candidate today will be Jim Prentice. Jim, if you'd like to move on up. Jim Prentice was the MP for Calgary North Centre from 2004 to 2008. He was Minister of Industry, Environment and Indian Affairs and Northern Development. He also served as Chair of Canada's Operations Committee. 7 minutes, Jim. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's wonderful to be here on the Tsuut'ina First Nation, with whom I have a long association, and also to be here amongst Rotary members. And I know that your motto is service above self, and I want to speak to that. You know, I did a tour of duty in public service. I'm not a professional politician. I'm a private citizen who believes in public service. And I did a tour of duty. I served honorably in our federal parliament. I sat beside the Prime Minister for 6 years. He referred to my role in chairing the Operations Committee of Cabinet as being the Chief Operating Officer of the Government of Canada. But I left that life. I came back home to Calgary. Was a tour of duty. I'd promised my wife of 31 years, Karen, that it would be a tour of duty of 10 years, and we came home. And we've been leading our private lives in the same way that you have. We have 2 grandchildren that are the pride of our lives. But I have become disappointed. I have become disappointed over the last several years in terms of what I've seen in my province. And I said to Karen, I don't intend to turn 80 years old someday and look in the mirror and see somebody that didn't step up to do something about this. And so, like you, I've been a taxpayer, I've been concerned, I've been disappointed as we have lived through 2 years, which has probably been 2 of the most disappointing years in public governance in this province. And so, you know, it's about the priorities of our citizens. I came to political life many years ago. I was inspired by someone who I think everyone in this room knew, Peter Lougheed. And when I was a young man 40 years ago, he inspired me to believe in the future of this province and our dream of what we are trying to build in Alberta. A province that is proudly entrepreneurial, a province that rewards hard work, that recognizes hard work, that doesn't tax its citizens to death, a province that stands tall on the national stage, that is a driving engine of the Canadian economy, a province that protects the environment, a province, though, that's not just about business and that is not a work camp, a province that has and takes pride in leading the country in terms of the quality of the life for our citizens. And that's everything from our public education system through to education at university and colleges. It is how we take care of our senior citizens. It's about our public health care system. And it's about the quality of the public infrastructure that we have in this province. And so that's the Alberta I dream about. One of the earlier commentators talked about leadership being about the aspirations of people to be more, to do more, and to dream more. And that is what we need to dream about going forward in this province. Albertans are an enormously hopeful people, confident. But they know that over the last several years, we have been off of our game. And so they are looking for fresh leadership. They're looking for a new approach. They are looking for someone who has not been present through this most disappointing time. They want to start with a fresh approach in terms of the way forward. And so the agenda that I speak about as I've crisscrossed the province, and it's been a wonderful summer. I promised Karen 31 years ago when I married her that we would someday take a motorhome trip across Alberta, and this was the summer. And I've been able to put my jeans on and my cowboy boots, and it has been one of the most wonderful experiences of my life, to be everywhere from Lacrete to Medicine Hat and from Beaver Lodge to Lloydminster. But the priorities I talk about are the priorities Albertans are talking about, because they don't come from the government, because I don't come from the government. They don't come from cabinet or caucus, because I don't. And so I've talked about the 5 things that Albertans are speaking about. Firstly, fiscal responsibility. You know, you don't win a bigger lottery than to be an Alberta citizen in our lifetime. And so if we can't balance our books, ladies and gentlemen, who can balance their books? And so we are going to run consolidated, if I am successful and become your premier, we're going to run consolidated financials that people understand. We're going to operate the government of Alberta in the black ink, not in the red ink. We're going to record surpluses. We're going to take 50% of those surpluses and put them into our collective savings account, including but not only limited to the Heritage Savings Trust Fund. We're going to take the other 50% and pay off debt and catch up on public infrastructure. Secondly, we are going to end entitlements. There is going to be a new approach. You saw I spoke about this yesterday and indicated that one of the first pieces of legislation I would introduce is an Accountability Act. There will be no more sweetheart contracts with political staffers, no more sweetheart severance contractors, tighter lobby rules, no more sole source contracts for people doing business with the government. It is time for all of this to end. Albertans have been disgusted by what they've seen. And we'll deal with airplanes as well, and the misuse of airplanes for purposes other than government business, which should never have happened and which people should have stood up and said something about a long time ago. And so we'll end entitlements. And this will be about the tone that we set as a government, as a party. It's also about our economy. It's about accessing global markets. It's about getting global prices for our resources. Because as wonderful as the Americans are, and though they are our best friends, we cannot have a bright future if we are a supplier of discounted commodities into the United States. And so we need these pipelines. We need leadership from the next Premier of Alberta with the Premier of British Columbia and with First Nations to strike arrangements to get access off of the West Coast. We also need to deal with the environment and to become an environmental leader again. But fifthly, and most significantly, it's about our quality of life together, because Alberta is not a work camp. It is a proud province of proud communities. It is a province that wants to have the best public education system for its children and does not want to be a place that runs lotteries for 5-year-old citizens to determine whether or not they can get into a public school, which is going on in our city, ladies and gentlemen, and which is inexplicable. We want to have good public health care, and we want to take care of our senior citizens. And I'm passionate about this. My mother passed away in a senior citizen home in this province last October, and I think we can do better. I think our senior citizen facility should meet fire code. I think that we should be partnering with communities of faith and with others so that we increase the number of units that we have, so we don't have to split people up who've been married for 65 years. And so this is all the agenda that I hear everywhere in the province. It is the agenda of Albertans, and in the spirit of public service, it is an agenda that I intend to take action on, acting out what they want to see in their government. And I ask for your support. Thank you, and God bless, ladies and gentlemen.
ਬੈਸਟ ਬਾਏ ਫਰਨੀਚਰ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੁਝ ਅਨੋਖਾ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਵੱਖਰਾ ਬਣਾਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸੁਪਨਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਮਹਿਲ ਲਈ ਫਰਨੀਚਰ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਅਜਿਹੀ ਕਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਜੋ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਿਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲੇਗੀ। ਸ਼ਾਨਦਾਰ, ਮਜ਼ਬੂਤ ਤੇ ਆਰਾਮਦਾਇਕ ਫਰਨੀਚਰ, ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦੇ ਆਰਾਮਦਾਇਕ ਪਲਾਂ ਲਈ। Best Buy Furniture, the perfect homemaker. Finance available for 6 months with 0% interest. Call 403-250-6661. 403-250-6661.
Thank you, Jim. Now ask Thomas Lukaszuk to please come up. Sorry, Thomas. And I asked you how you pronounced it before we met. Thank you. Thomas has been MLA for Edmonton Castle Downs since 2001. He has been Minister of Jobs, Skills, Training and Labour, Minister of Enterprise and Advanced Education, and various other posts. You have 7 minutes.
Thank you. Well, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the honor of inviting us over here, and thank you for taking out of your busy schedule to be here with us. It's an important time in our province, and you will get to choose who our new premier, your new premier, will be for our province of Alberta. But first of all, I want to share a little bit with you about my journey, because I have to tell you, the journey has been incredible, and we all aspire to be like someone, and we all look up to someone. But I have to tell you, it is you, all of you, and even though I may not have met many of you, that really inspired me to do what I do. And that is because I came to this country as a 13-year-old from behind the Iron Curtain that didn't speak a word of English. And Canada has been just phenomenal to my family, to myself. And I promised myself that one day, given an opportunity, I would like to inspire others and give others an opportunity to flourish in our country, in our province, and grow this province moving forward. And just the ability to run for the top elected office in this province is something that is simply incredible. And also it gives us an opportunity to show who we truly are as individuals, not running on the platform or of another leader or a political party. So thank you, all of you, for that opportunity. But when I look at our province of Alberta, I do agree with my colleagues that this is a province of opportunities, and often when we live here, we don't appreciate how fortunate we are compared to any other place within the world. And we have been blessed. We've been blessed by the natural resources that we have. And in particular, as we know, our petroleum, oil and gas have been just phenomenal for us and have grown our economy and our quality of lives. But at the same time, we all know that the Stone Age did not end because they ran out of stones. Bronze came along. And Premier Lougheed and that government and private sector of the day some 43 years ago have made some very crucial decisions. When conventional oil was still gushing out of the ground and Americans would buy every barrel we could possibly produce, they already looked forward and decided that we need to grow the next economy, and they have identified oil sands, even though at that time, government was largely criticized for that, for investing into a commodity that didn't make economic sense at that point in time, and when conventional oil was available. But they had that vision, and look at us now. 43 years later, this is the main source of our economic activity. We are at that very same fork in the road right now. We want 43 years from now, our kids and grandkids looking back and saying, thankfully they made the right decisions and have evolved our economy even further. And we have many possibilities, and I'll just tell you about two, and I know you have many others that we should be looking at, but agriculture. Agriculture is what kick-started this province. Agriculture is the only renewable, sustainable economy that we have in this province. And yet, when you really look at agriculture, other than the fact that machinery is fancier, they have GPSs on combines now, and farms are getting bigger and bigger, it hasn't really changed a lot. We still produce and export the same products. And we know that Canada, and particularly Alberta, the prairies within Canada, will be one of the very few places in the world that will be producing surplus food. We will be the food basket of the rest of the world. So we have to ask ourselves the question, are we going to send our products in a raw form, or are we going to refine and upgrade those products right here in Alberta? And I'm sitting right in front of a table of Olds College, and that's where a lot of this is going to happen. You know, when you buy a box of Kellogg's cornflakes at Safeway, it costs $6. You rip it up at home and you see there's a penny worth of corn, could be from Tabor, penny worth of cardboard, could be from Hinton, and a penny worth of plastic, could be from Fort McMurray. If we were so lucky, and all of this was sourced from Alberta, we would have made 3 cents. Somebody's making $5.97. I want it made right here in Alberta. I want to make sure that our children have other opportunities in other careers. I want to make sure that kids in rural Alberta can have high-tech, high-paying jobs without having to leave rural Alberta. But that also means that we have to bring education to kids, not kids to education. You know, today I read in the news and University of Alberta wants to increase tuition by 52%. That is simply unacceptable. We know that we will be a province that will be thriving on brains, not on muscles. We don't have the population to be competitive in manufacturing, but we have brilliant post-secondary institutions, and we could be the brain trust of the world, not only in agriculture, not only in petroleum, but in environment and in development and commercialization of new technologies, perhaps in medicine, both animal and human medicine, perhaps in pharmaceuticals. We do have the fundamentals, but we are one of the very few provinces or jurisdictions in the world where we get to sit in a room like this and actually imagine, because of the great decisions that have been made by previous governments on a financial side. But there is more to life than just making money. There's also social development. And in a province like ours, we simply can't afford to have situations where we have kids where we don't have schools. We can't afford to have our seniors spending the last days of their lives in hospitals, even though they're not sick, but there are no senior homes. I don't want to hear any more from those who come across from Saskatchewan and tell me that a long time ago they knew when they hit the Alberta border because the highways got better. Now they can't tell whether they're in Saskatchewan or Alberta. That is simply unacceptable. We have for some time fallen behind on infrastructure, and we have been evolving our province into more of a work camp than a province that we are proud of. We have to make sure that we provide the quality of life to our future generations so that they want to live here, so that they stay over here, and so that we even attract further talent into our province. Money is no longer the currency. If you want Albertans, young Albertans, to stay in our province, and if we want to attract more of them, quality of life is the currency that we have to aim for. And that is why I have a very ambitious infrastructure plan that will be deferred over a number of years because no jurisdiction can pay for all of it cash, but that is the right investment. It is time to start investing into Albertans, and together we can grow this province into a province that 43 years from now, they will look back and say, thank God those the Rotarians got together and picked the right premier. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Just take a seat up here. Jim, Rick, if you'd like to move up. Thank you, Jen. Posed. They have agreed to keep their responses short and to the point. No waffle, no debate, 1 minute each. Do you get that, Jim? 1 minute each, okay. At the same time, I would ask that you do the same with your questions. Otherwise, I will move on to the next person and hear their question. Questions only, no commentary, please. Do we have any questions? Right, Bill?
You don't trust me. So, hello, John Stinson's my name, and I'll be very brief. All of you talked about fiscal responsibility and also the importance of the public education system. And I'm just wondering, one comment was we're going to balance in 3 years the budget. Are we going to finance all these schools that we need on the income statement, or are we prepared? Can we do that, or are we going to have to continue to be in debt?
Okay, thank you.
I want a specific answer from each of you on that.
Yes, that's what we've requested. Thank you. Rick?
Well, thanks, John. It's a great question. And I was the one that said I would balance the budget in a maximum of 3 years. And the answer to your question is some of each, probably. The fact is we got about 100,000 people a year coming in, and 13 to 18% of them are school ages, and that adds up to 25 schools a year. We need to work with the school boards and the teachers and the parents and find out how many schools we need. We need to go back and look at our finances. We need to pay cash for as many as we can, but we still need the schools. If we don't have a seat for every kid, they're not coming. This province needs senior executives, laborers, doctors, lawyers, teachers, nurses, and if they're not coming unless they can get their kids in school. So I will manage it if I'm in charge responsibly, and you will know about it. It will be reported in a way that you will not have to have an accounting degree in order to understand the answer. And then we'll schedule a mortgage burning party, so 20, 25 years from now we can say we built this exact school for this much money, it's paid for, and we can still use it for another 50 years.
Thanks very much, Rick. Jim?
Well, thank you, John. If I am the Premier, we will run surplus budgets every year I'm the Premier. Now, we have an incredible public infrastructure deficit in this province. It relates to schools, it relates to roads, which are in the worst condition they've been probably in the lifetime of anybody in this room, especially in the north of this province. It relates also to hospitals, it relates to senior citizen facilities. And so we need a plan put forward by the new Premier. I would suggest to you that it needs to be a plan that we build these assets as quickly as possible. It should be a 5-year plan. I think that we'll use as much cash as we possibly can. To the extent that we have to access debt markets, we should do it in the same way a family does. You minimize the size of the mortgage that you take out, and then you pay it out on an accelerated amortization basis of 15 years. And I say we report twice a year with a report card in the Legislative Assembly to Albertans about what they're getting for their money.
Okay, Thomas.
Thank you, John. Just like families, no family should be borrowing money to buy groceries. Your operating budget has to be balanced. But every family, and frankly, most businesses do defer the cost of infrastructure over a prolonged period of time. You amortize it, you depreciate it over time, and it simply makes financial sense to do so. The fact is that not only are we far behind infrastructure, which is actually impacting our operating budget because we're spending extra money in health and other places because we don't have adequate infrastructure, and our economy is starting to feel the bumps because of the fact that we don't have that economic infrastructure, roads, bridges, culverts, water treatment plants, the list goes on and on. So the reality is that we will have to amortize the cost of physical infrastructure. We will look at creative ways of financing that infrastructure. We do have a preferred borrowing rate at this point in time. Frankly, Alberta can make money by borrowing money, and that is the only way we're going to meet the quality of life.
Thank you, Thomas.
If we don't.
Okay, next question, Garfield.
Hello, my name is Hans Elder. I'm from Canmore. Both Mr. Prentice and Mr. McIver spoke about fiscal responsibility as an important part of their platform. I've never heard anyone in political life run on a platform of fiscal irresponsibility. So I guess it really boils down to some specific questions and answers about responsibility.
So what is your
So
question?
my question is, the Municipal Government Act is currently open for discussion, and some of the conversations that are happening with municipalities are increasing their ability to tax Albertans. What is your position on allowing more tax room for municipalities?
Jim.
Well, thank you, Hans. There are governments for sure that have delivered fiscal irresponsibility. I've never been associated with one of them, and I, for sure, if I'm the Premier, you won't see that at all. We will be a fiscally responsible government because that is the cornerstone principle of good governance. No new taxes in terms of municipalities. That's the short answer. The municipalities have adequate taxing authority at the present time. I don't support, additional tax authorities on the part of municipalities in this province. Don't think it's necessary. To be sure, there need to be a new partnership between the province and municipal governments in terms of funding going forward, and there's a great deal of frustration. But I don't think the solution is new taxes. There's only one taxpayer in this province, and we need to protect that taxpayer and make sure that we're not layering on additional taxes at this time.
Excellent, thank you. Rick?
Well, thank you. And as you know, I'm the one up here that has experience in the municipal government and actually fought against adding new taxes even when I was on city council because it wasn't the right thing to do then and it's not the right thing to do now. Having said that, all governments are under the same pressure, federal, provincial, municipal, to build infrastructure. We all have needs beyond what we can afford. It comes down to setting priorities, being disciplined. And what I have said to my colleagues in AUMA and AMDNC and the mayors of Calgary and Edmonton is I agree with them. They need more money. But we as a province can only provide it as we can afford it. Not from new taxes, but from the revenue that we have, because they are right to ask for more money because while we have big infrastructure needs for schools, roads, hospitals, they have other big infrastructure needs for their rules, recreation centers, fire halls, police stations, all that kind of stuff. And we need to work in partnership with them. And I can tell you, through my time in the municipal world, I have good relationships with the people there, and I will use that to negotiate that. And I haven't made a Candyman promise of a fat number, just said, as we can afford it, as it's responsible, we'll give them more money.
We're on to Thomas. Thank you.
Short answer, no new taxation, but there's a lot of work to be done with municipalities because I do agree with Rick. They do need money to provide that quality of life to their own residents. The fact is, first of all, I promise AMDNC and AUMA that we need to do an inventory, what it is that municipalities now do, because over time, both federal and provincial government have downloaded many responsibilities onto municipalities, and the current funding formulas don't reflect the services that they actually provide. So we need to take a look at that. Second of all, as we're reviewing the Municipal Government Act, we also need to review some of the major funding formulas like MSI and Green Trip, because those formulas were put in place before the sudden growth in population. I want to create formulas that actually encourage collaboration between municipalities, whereas there is an actual financial incentive for them to do things together. As you know, the relationships right now can be rather acrimonious.
Okay, thank you very much. We go over to Bill. You have a question over there?
ਪਿਛਲੇ 10 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਮਿਠਾਈਆਂ ਦੀ ਮਿਠਾਸ ਨਾਲ ਤੇ ਕਮਾਲ ਦੇ ਚਟਪਟੇ ਤੜਕਿਆਂ ਨਾਲ ਕੈਲਗਰੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਵਾਲੇ ਸ਼ਾਨਦਾਰ ਸਵਾਦ ਦਾ ਅਹਿਸਾਸ ਕਰਵਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਬੀਕਾਨੇਰ ਸਵੀਟਸ ਐਂਡ ਰੈਸਟੋਰੈਂਟਸ। ਘਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਵੇ ਕੋਈ ਛੋਟੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਜਾਂ ਵੱਡਾ ਫੰਕਸ਼ਨ, ਘਰ ਵਰਗੇ ਸਵਾਦ ਲਈ ਕੈਟਰਿੰਗ ਕਰਵਾਓ ਜਾਂ ਲੰਚ ਬਫੇ ਲਈ ਆਓ। 200 ਮਹਿਮਾਨਾਂ ਤੱਕ ਦੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਲਈ ਹਾਲ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਇੰਤਜ਼ਾਮ ਹੈ। ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 403 568 5555 403 568 5555।
Hi, I'm Catherine Brownlee. I'm curious to know what your plans are to increase grad rates, particularly with the gap with our First Nations, Inuit, and Métis versus mainstream.
I will start with Thomas.
Well, thank you. You know, education starts even before kids go to school, and it becomes very, very much determining. When I was a Minister of Education, I actually approached a number of First Nations governments and have offered to close the gap in funding. Our federal government is still funding our children on reserves at 50% of the rate of what our children are being funded. No wonder they have difficulties later on in life. Second of all, we have to make sure that we inspire our young people into careers that exist right now, and we give them opportunities in remote areas to obtain that education. So distance learning, collaboration between post-secondary institutions, and making education as closely available to home where the young people live is very important. Having to move to a large city, that is a big barrier that often many young people cannot overcome.
Well, I think most people in the room know of my history over a lifetime working with First Nations, and I, for example, negotiated the residential school settlement agreement. I've spent part of this campaign meeting with First Nation leaders and Métis leaders. I've just come back from a trip up north, and education is top of the list. It's unacceptable that we have the discrepancy that you're talking about between First Nation children in this province and other children. You know, child may be a child of First Nation parents, but they are an Alberta citizen first and foremost, and they have to be treated that way. And so I've talked with some of the leading First Nation advocates and leaders, especially in northern Alberta, about the need to have a different approach, maybe to set aside some jurisdictional barriers and focus on getting kids through school. It's going to take leadership both from whoever's the premier, but also leadership from First Nation communities. It has to be done in a respectful way, but you know, there are very significant issues looming if we don't increase the graduation rate for young Aboriginal children.
Thanks, you, Jim. Rick?
Well, thank you. And I intend to use the good relationship that I have with the First Nations. And we need to understand that their children are Albertans too. A fact is, a statistic is that people that don't finish high school, First Nations or otherwise, an Albertan, will use $10,000 to $15,000 a year on average over their life in healthcare, more than somebody that doesn't finish high school. So we're actually investing in ourselves. We're saving money when we get Albertans to graduate high school, and I'll make that a priority. I think I'll do that by making sure there's choice in education, something that I've been quite vocal about saying that I would support. I will work with both the public separate school boards and the nations. And you know what? And again, I would say to you, I have that type of relationship where I can do that. I received my Indian name a couple weeks ago from the Tsuut'ina here on the reserve. Goes into the night, in case you're wondering. Not goes quietly into the night. But it's other Albertans too. We need to make sure everybody finishes high school.
Thank you very much. Les?
Hi.
If you have questions, put your hands up. The people with the mics will get to you eventually. Chris?
Hi, Chris Davis. Question that I haven't heard anybody talking about is about arts and culture. To have a vibrant community, we not only have to have a robust economy, but I think to attract people and keep people, we need to invest in arts and culture. So I'd like to hear what your vision is for arts and culture and supporting it in Alberta. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Everything I know about arts and culture, I have a daughter who's an artist, actually, and so I've learned a lot about this through her. You know, we have to celebrate who we are, and we have to get back on our game as Albertans, and part of that involves a confidence and a pride in who we are. It's Aretha Van Herk says, who are the Albertans? They're the ones that don't do what they're told. They step out of bounds and fall down on their face and get up laughing. And so, you know, we need a confidence about who we are, and we celebrate that through arts and culture. You know, it's more than a nice to have. We need to make sure that we're getting the appropriate amount of funding to arts organizations. There need to be collaboration with the private sector. We need to take the arts community in Alberta, outside of Alberta, and tell people more about the Alberta story. And so it's a big part of our province, big part of our city here. And, you know, we need to celebrate what it is to be an Albertan and be proud of it. And they do that every day.
Thanks very much, Jim. Rick?
Well, thank you. And I know there's one of the candidates up here to say the government hasn't done anything good, but it's not true. We just finished committing some money to, in partnership with the cities, to have a film studio here in this area. And we need to do things like that. We need to collaborate with municipalities and arts groups. And I think something we need to do is actually make it easier for other people to support arts, looking through tax mechanisms. I know that through charities it was made possible for people to give shares more easily than used to be the case. And perhaps there's mechanisms like that I think we can use to support arts groups. And through that, we can expand and help people that are telling Alberta's story. because our history matters. If you don't know where you're coming from, you don't know where you're going to. So it is really a matter of working with the groups and looking for those responsible financial mechanisms that will provide the financing.
Thank you. Thomas?
Required.
Thank you. A lot of great work has been done with the arts in the province, but there's always room for a lot more. There's no doubt about it. You know, we have to come to a point culturally as a province where we realize that arts are not only the right thing to do, but they're also the smart thing to do. Arts in this province actually is a major economic activity. And it is only because of arts and culture and the quality of life that it affords us that we are managing to attract and retain people in this province. So it's part of the fabric of quality of life. One of the issues that artists are struggling with, and I just spoke with a group in Fort McMurray, is that they don't have public spaces. We need to be able as government to reprofile and make spaces available for them to do the great work that they do. And obviously through taxation incentives, entice private sector and private individuals to donate and support our artistic community. Vital to our economy.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Garfield.
I have read in the paper that Thomas Lukaszuk said, don't give a rat's patooey. Albertans don't do that. I have been an Albertan all my life. I've been in healthcare for 62 years. And my question is to all of you, what are you going to do about the healthcare system? I would cut out 150,000 jobs in middle management.
Okay, so we got the question is on healthcare system, and Rick.
Okay, thank you for that. The things that I think, there's a couple things that I think are true about healthcare. One is that it's a very good system, and two, that it's not good enough. Interestingly enough, I think both those things exist as true at the same time. For me, we need to actually connect those people in the system and the frontline workers delivering the system to the decision makers. We need to bring them closer together, and not by replacing the super board, but by actually having decision makers closer to where the services are delivered. I think we actually need to copy and learn from other jurisdictions, other provinces in particular, under a similar tax regime, where they're getting better value for the dollars than Albertans are. If it was a money problem, we would have solved it long before we got to $17 billion. It's a management problem, folks. And I will work with people to talk with the managers and the frontline workers and look for those ideas, shamelessly take ideas from other provinces. And another thing, I will make it different than it is now. Right now, MLAs ask for information, are told we can't talk to you. That's our job. I'm going to make it sure that MLAs can talk and get answers on behalf of their constituents.
Great, and now we'll move to Thomas. Thank you.
Well, thank you. You're right. I did say that Albertans don't give a rat's patootie who is the executive and what the board of governors looks like. You know, the fact is that we had many CEOs and boards go through. We paid them big severances, but at the end of the day, Albertans are still frustrated with the waits and emergencies, and the list goes on and on. So I also said in that article that there are too many people running around hospitals with clipboards and too few with stethoscopes. We need to focus on frontline delivery. We need to listen to frontline workers, and that's where the wisdom and where the decision-making capacity really is. Appointing a new super board and then paying them severances, we've seen that. We've seen that movie before. Hasn't resulted in any appreciable improvement in quality of care. I choose to focus right now on frontline service delivery where the pains really are.
Okay, thank you very much. Jim.
I'm not sure what a raspatouille is, but I could probably guess. We have wonderful frontline workers, doctors and nurses and other staff that give us wonderful care when we go to our hospital. I spent a lot of time with them over the course of the campaign. They are very frustrated. They're frustrated because of the suffocation of management that's taking place, the middle management. I can't corroborate your figure of 150,000. I don't know, but I know there's a lot, and I know AHS has become far too large. It is the largest employer in Alberta. It's the 6th largest deliverer of health care services on the planet. And so it's going to need some work. It's going to need getting back to those focus on frontline workers, catching up to places like Saskatchewan, Quebec, British Columbia in terms of wait times and the quality of service that we're getting as Albertans. And it's going to need some governance changes. And that includes in particular for rural Albertans, having some say in terms of the quality of care that they're getting in their communities, because that is, ladies and gentlemen, one of the biggest issues in this province.
Great. Thanks very much, Jim. We'll go over to Bill.
Okay. Linda Anderson. The opposition constantly refers to the Old Boys Club as being the captain of government in Alberta and not the wishes of the people. What is your plan to overcome this criticism?
Thomas.
Well, I don't think they refer to chronology of age, and if they do, then I'm happy. But what they are really referring to, I think, is the cadre of consultants, government relations consultants, public relations consultants that tend to like to stick around campaigns when we have leadership races, and then later on like to be very close to government and frankly manage government. And we've seen that movie before. And that is why I made a very conscious decision that my campaign will be run exclusively by volunteers, and not one consulting company will be affiliated with my campaign, because it is time to press the reset button, and those very familiar names to all of us need to be extricated from the process, so those who you actually elected get to make independent decisions without the pressure that you get from many of the consulting firms. And that is why my campaign is run the way it is right now, and that is why I speak for myself every time you hear me say about a rat's patootie.
Thanks, Thomas. We go to Jim.
Well, not surprisingly, the Old Boys Club is about the old boys, isn't it? And so, you know, I've tried over the course of my campaign to bring new people into political life, and there's a couple of them standing in the corner here. My campaign is comprised of bright, young, talented men and women who've been attracted to politics, who want to make a difference. And I spoke earlier this week about the need to introduce an Accountability Act as one of the first bills of the new government. I introduced the notion of term limits, that people should serve as a premier for 8 years, as an MLA for 12 years. It shouldn't be a job. It should be a tour of duty in public service. And that's why I've spoken about that. That's why we need more throughput in terms of people. That's why we need more turnover. That's why we need to be more vibrant and vital in terms of our democracy. And we'll only get there with the people who are going to inherit this province. It's the young people.
Great. Thank you very much. Rick?
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. But unfortunately, we just heard from the Old Boys Club. The fact is that the two gentlemen there, fine young men, I have a lot of respect for them. They're on another campaign. They were involved and interested in politics before this campaign started. The fact is the Old Boys Club is gathered around one particular campaign. It's not mine. So if you want change, you want somebody that doesn't owe anything, somebody that is going to go in and give this thing a good shake. I'll do that. And you know how it starts? It starts by actually been in the game, on the ice, playing the game, sometimes scoring hat tricks, sometimes scoring in my own net, learning what it has to change. And you know what? So it comes down to, I know a couple of the people at the top that have to go. I'll go them. And that focuses the mind. As they say, nothing focuses the mind like a hanging. There's some other very good people that need to be promoted and be put in positions of responsibility and authority. And I'll do that. And I won't tell the voters who to vote for by adding something where they say people have to go even though the voters want them. I'll listen to the public. That's how you get rid of the Old Boys Club.
Good. Thank you very much. People. We'll start off, though, with Garfield over here, please.
Hi, guys. Greg DePusca. My question is around post-secondary education. There were education cuts last year and obviously some money put back, but how do you guys plan to kind of bolster the post-secondary education system to help young minds really get us to a place where we need to be so we're set up and going into the future?
Sounds great. Thank you. Rick? Sorry, Jim. Sorry, yeah.
Well, we have great institutions in our province, you know, universities and colleges, post-secondary institutions. They need a stable funding framework. You can't build world-class institutions if you don't have line of sight in terms of what your budget's going to be and how you're going to continue to operate financially. And the lurching around that we've had in terms of public funding to publicly funded institutions, post-secondary institutions, is not acceptable. Students also need to have support. We need to make sure that students are financially supported through our loans and our bursary system so that they too have predictability. You know, universities and colleges are receiving public funds. I do think they also need to be accountable to the public. They need to make sure that they are providing programs for which there's, you know, jobs available. Clearly, students make their own choices, but we need to make sure that, you know, our colleges and universities are incentivized to provide appropriate programs.
Excellent. Rick?
I love this because it has to do with the future, but I think we need to work, and this is one area where my colleague and I probably agree on a lot of things, and I'll say this. We need to work with the post-secondary. We need to coordinate our efforts to fill those 96,000 jobs that we know are going to go wanting in Alberta in the next 10 years and make sure Alberta young people are qualified for those jobs so that they can get them, A, so they can make a great living, and B, so they can pay their student loan back if they have one. And we need to actually stay in touch with them. And I don't know, we need to keep adding, as we can afford it, seats in post-secondary institutions. I've heard from all of them that they want more, certainly from the universities here in Calgary, that they need more opportunities and more places to educate young people. And the other thing that we're going to have to do, as with all the items, is listen to young people like you, listen to the institutions delivering that post-secondary education, and that'll give us the very best chance of being right when we make these important decisions.
Thomas.
Well, thank you. Well, number one, what we need to do is review the funding formulas to make sure that we maximize on the dollars that are currently being spent and that we have more collaboration between the 26 institutions. So no matter which school you're at, you can benefit from the wealth and the programming of other institutions in the system. Second of all, we have to do an executive salary review. Some of the salaries that you will be hearing over the next month or so because of retirements will shock you. Also, what we need to do is make sure that we strike a balance between professional faculties and humanities. Both are very important. My platform is based on evolving our economy. Most of it will be based on post-secondary research. But the fact is that we need to maximize on the dollars that are currently being spent. And I know, for one, that there is great deal of improvement that can be had.
Thank you. Les?
Terry McDonough. One of the biggest, well, the biggest economic challenge facing Alberta today is getting our resources and our products to market. And I would like to know what you would do as Premier to tie down that XL pipeline and the Northern Gateway and get our oil and gas moving.
Okay, Rick.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll stop doing, and then I'll lead to what I will do. I won't be adding more cost onto the industry by raising the carbon levy to make our industry less competitive while we do it. I think there are our friends south of the border, but I think they're kind of laughing at us because on one hand they say our oil's dirty, and on the other hand we've got the highest environmental standards, and they're still not agreeing to it. So I think essentially we need to, I will negotiate in a serious way, obviously with the federal government and the U.S. government, and try to come to a joint agreement on what kind of environmental standards there are. You know, if we cut our emissions to zero in Alberta, it's not going to make, you won't be able to measure the difference on the world scale. But if we work with the U.S. and together go down 5 or 10%, that'll actually be doing something. And not only that, our industry won't have their hands tied behind their back. So we need to do that, and we also need to remember that the U.S. isn't our only choice to get on the world market. In fact, if we get to the U.S. and we can't get the tied market through the U.S., we're still stuck with one customer. So I'll be aware of that as Premier too. We actually, even if we get to the U.S., we have to be able to get it on a ship, or we're not on the world market.
Well, thank you. Well, we don't have stringent environmental standards because we want to please U.S. We have stringent environmental standards because this is our province, this is the province we love, and this is where we will be raising our kids and grandkids. The fact is that the language which we use for negotiating our access to market has to change significantly, particularly with our Aboriginal communities. No longer can the question be in a very colonial sense, how much do I have to pay you to get the pipeline through, but it has to be, how can you become my partner in this enterprise so we can get this pipeline through. And no, I disagree with my colleague on this one. We have to keep our environmental standards stringent so that we have our consumers' confidence in the fact that we are good stewards of our environment and that our product meets their requirements, and particularly for European market and others. You know, frankly, it is not in Americans' worst interest to make sure that our oil doesn't reach other markets. They get to buy it for 40% less.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Well, this is the biggest issue facing us, an economic issue in terms of our future. If we don't take steps to increase the takeaway capacity for Alberta Energy by 2018, we are going to be back in the circumstance we were in 2 years ago when our public finances collapsed and we weren't getting $110 a barrel, which is world prices. We were getting prices as low as $50 a barrel. So that's clearly not acceptable, and nobody can sleep at night in this province as long as that's our future. So what do we need to do? Well, the job of the new Premier, and it can only be the Premier who drives this. That is the only way it's going to happen. I have experienced this, and I know it. The new Premier is going to have to strike an arrangement with Premier Clark, and the new Premier is going to have to strike partnerships with coastal First Nations who have both environmental concerns and concerns about the siting of facilities. There's only 3 or 4 locations on the West Coast that you can possibly put a facility such as this, and the people that live there want to be our partners. This can be done. I'm an optimist, but it's going to take the right person to do it.
Thank you, Jim. Bill?
Tim Anderson, a quick question for you regarding, we're on First Nations land. If you have a development on First Nations land, there's no, the treatment from the provincial government financially is not equal. It has to be lobbied for. What are your thoughts on getting something put in place so that developments that take place on First Nations lands around the province will be treated in the same sense as other municipal jurisdictions?
Thomas?
Well, thank you. Well, there definitely are jurisdictional issues, and that's part of the reason. I have always been an advocate that even though we have to respect the treaties and the jurisdictional differences, people who live on reserves are still Albertans, and to me, they are Albertans first. And that is why I have been approaching Aboriginal communities not only with educational funding, but actually even willing to build educational facilities on reserves and allow for more of that cross-pollination of economic incentives to take place. Because at the end of the day, if we don't do that, we will end up paying for that anyhow. And that is something that we simply cannot rightfully and morally continue to do. Whatever we've done for 150 years simply hasn't worked.
Okay, Rick?
Well, Tim, you're sandbagging us here, man. For those that don't know Mr. Anderson that just asked a question, he's a past mayor of Redwood Meadows, which is on First Nation land. So he actually knows the answer to this question better than I'm guessing all 3 of us on the stage put together. Don't you, Tim? So I would say what I would do is I would talk to you, Mr. Anderson, and I would try to get you down sit down you at the table with the Tsuut'ina Nation, who I just made an arrangement with for the Ring Road, and I would talk to people that know and have a stake in it, and I would try to get a federal representative at the table with us to see what can work and what cannot. You know what? When you have difficult problems, you can look at me as the type of premier that, believe me, I don't have all the answers. When I don't, I try to get advice from those that do. I'm looking at one right now.
Okay, Jim?
Well, thank you. I've known Tim a long time, and I'm not exactly sure what the specifics are either, but I'm sure I'll hear more about it. You know, in terms of First Nations, we need a different form of partnership. And in some cases, that may involve economic development initiatives, and there's a great discussion going on right now between the government and First Nations about consultation, accommodation, resource sharing, and that whole bundle of constitutional issues. And that discussion is going to have to carry on, and it's, you know, that's a process that doesn't end. But the second thing is about kids. It's about our children, it's about First Nation children, and that's my focus. My focus is the system of education and how we make sure that young First Nation children have the same opportunities as other Albertans. We get them through primary school into post-secondary institution. I'm going to be very focused on that. I'm going to be very focused on it also in an urban environment. Edmonton is going to have the largest urban Aboriginal population in Canada within the next year or two, and this is the critical question.
Thanks very much indeed. We'll go to the centre here.
Sam Switzer. One of the gold mines not one of you have touched on is tourism. You know, tourism is a green. It doesn't take up oil. It doesn't take up anything. This hotel has 450 people working here.
So Sam, what's your question?
And what my question is I started out as a busboy in a restaurant. Look at the opportunities that we're missing with United States.
Sam,
we're not advertising anywhere except in Alberta.
Okay, we go. Garfield, you have a question over there? Nope. Bill? Nope. Okay. Do you want to address this at all? Yes. So let's start with Jim.
Well, tourism is one of the pillars of our economy. We have four strong pillars for the stool of Alberta. Energy, certainly forestry sector, agriculture, and tourism. There's great debate about whether tourism is 3 or 4. I know that. But the point is it's an extremely important industry. And we have a model in terms of Travel Alberta, in terms of the work that's done here and the way in which it's done in collaboration with the tourism industry. I think we need to continue on that path. I don't think government has the answers. I think industry has the answers, and people like yourself with a lifetime of experience are the people that we should turn to. Clearly we should be reaching out to new markets and bringing new people here. This is an unbelievable province. We're proud of it, and we should showcase it in any way we can.
Thomas? Well, thank you. We have a lot in common. I bussed in waiters for about 7 years of my university education, so I feel your pain. Two things. First of all, we need to diversify our tourism and also promote rural Alberta. There are many places in Alberta throughout the entire province that we should be proud of, and we should be directing our tourists to come and visit. Second thing, we need a premier who will finally stand up to our federal government on the temporary foreign worker file, because this is what is killing our tourism industry right now. The fact is that our restaurants are starting to go out of business, or they're shortening their hours. At night, trust me, I've been driving a lot over the last few weeks. Restaurants and motels are shutting down, and there's no receptionists because they simply can't afford to operate without any workers. It is time to stand up for Alberta and make sure that this industry can thrive. It is a very important industry for Alberta.
So, Rick.
Well, thank you, Sam. And it's been a long time since you were a busboy. However, you are an expert at tourism. I know that because you've been involved in the industry for a long time. And Thomas and I agree on one thing. As Premier, I will take a hard line with the federal government to get more control over tourism or over the TFW program. Because if you can't make the beds and you can't wash the dishes and if you can't vacuum the floor, then the whole hotel shuts down, including the high-priced help. So that will be a high priority. But the other thing is we got to think about why people use tourism. Christine, my good wife, and I were in Cuba last year, and we're probably not going to go back. Food was good, people were good, accommodation was good, weather was good, no internet. Part of my program, my platform, is to increase broadband internet in rural Alberta. Not only will it help their quality of life, not only will it help the way they make a living, it'll actually help tourism, because I don't want to go someplace where I can't get a strong internet signal, and I'm sure visitors don't either. So it's not a one-faceted thing, but I think that broadband internet's going to make a big difference along with the TFWs.
Thanks very much, Rick. So that brings us to a conclusion of the question and answer, but we do have time for a quick comment from each of the candidates, and we'll start with Jim and keep it to about the minute again, please.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the Rotary Club for hosting us. This campaign really is about the promise of Alberta. It's about the future of Alberta. It is about the things that we've talked about today, but it's about leadership. And as I said at the outset in my opening comments, I'm stepping back into public service because I think this province needs leadership. We've not seen that for a period of time. We need leadership in terms of our fiscal finances, in terms of how we deal with our environment, in terms of all the public services that we've spoken about, in terms of access to education, in terms of how we are managing our public health care system, in terms of access to markets, which will drive our future as Albertans. So this campaign, you have to go back into the early 70s to find a time when there have been so many important issues on the table in this province that are going to be resolved. And I feel passionately about this for my children and my grandchildren. We are going to make decisions over the next several years that will determine what Alberta looks like, what our future is together like, not for the next 5 years or 10 years. It's going to be for the next 25 to 50 years. It's an important time. Thank you all for being here, and I hope that you'll take the opportunity to vote in the leadership race on the 5th and 6th of September. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Thomas.
Well, thank you. Well, this campaign is not about any particular issue. This campaign requires the winner to be a premier who really has an imagination, can bring fresh ideas, and fully realize our potential of what tomorrow in Alberta can be. But also, since we can't even imagine today what the issue may be tomorrow, this province calls for a premier who has integrity and who will make right decisions. Integrity is not something that you can legislate. Integrity is not something that needs to be written down in rules. Integrity is something that all of you practice the moment you wake up first thing in the morning. Albertans need to know that they will have a premier that no matter what they are doing in their busy lives, knowing that he will always make the right decision, not because it's written down, because he has that intuitive sense of knowing what is right and what is wrong. That's what this province needs right now.
Thank you, Thomas.
Right. What Alberta needs from their next premier is commitment and integrity. Someone that's been working here for over 30 years consistently and not just 3 months. Someone that's really committed to this province. Someone that, and that's what I've done. Someone that makes the right decisions, that will reach for the highest ideals. And that's what we need. We need, you know what, we have to actually, while dreaming of the future, while making the future better for our kids and grandkids, Albertans have to have somebody that they know and trust, recognizes that every penny we spend isn't our own penny, but the taxpayer's penny. That the future that we're building isn't our own future, it's 4.1 million Albertans' future. If I'm premier, those 4.1 million people will be the boss, the government will be their servant and not their commander. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's quite the session. I really appreciate you gentlemen sticking with the format there and keeping online and keeping on time. Please acknowledge our 3 outstanding candidates. President Coleman.
Wow, that was excellent. Thank you, all 3 of you, for being here today. I'd now like to call on fellow Rotarian, our motive action man, Carl Herzog, to thank our 3 guests. Carl.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Calgary West and all of our guests here today, we'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come here and share your passion and vision for Alberta. We certainly recognize that you have formidable tasks ahead of you, managing our natural resources, the environment, the economy, healthcare, education, social programs, and restoring public trust. When dealing with these complex issues, there will be many difficult decisions to make. And as you make your decisions, we Rotarians ask that you give special attention to the people less fortunate than ourselves, the working poor, the unemployed, and the uneducated, the people who are not in this room today, to enjoy this great meal and stimulating conversation. Because after all, regardless of the tough decisions that have to be made, these disadvantaged people require your support. Calgary West has a long and proud history of serving disadvantaged people through its support of numerous social service agencies such as the Drop-In Centre, the Food Bank, Feed the Hungry, and more. One of Calgary West's longest-running partnerships is with Motive Action Training Foundation. Motive Action, which is funded by Alberta Works, is an organization that teaches unemployed young men and women the work skills and attitudes required to become productive citizens and then gets them jobs afterward. In this partnership, Calgary West provides volunteer support for Motive Action special events, and in return, Motive Action students are pleased to individually construct, weld, and paint Calgary West's unique speaker gift, the world-famous boatman. If we can hand out these boatmen, please. So these boatmen have traveled the world and reside in many exotic places. However, I think it's the first time a boatman will find a home in a premier's office. And who knows, over time, maybe all these 3 boatmen will reside in a premier's office. You'll notice that each boatman has a lasso. We hope that you'll use it to rope in the wisdom and the resolve to meet the many challenges to come. Thanks again and good luck.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Arian.